Give me a glimmer of hope again. Save me from all my wandering. If I've been looking in all the wrong places, would you turn me back around again?
Welcome to HopeCasts, where our true stories brighten your day by providing insight and encouragement. I invite you to listen as my husband, Dr. Ken Brown, shares one of his amazing personal experiences that will inspire and stir your soul. Even in the challenges of life's darkest moments, you can always find a glimmer of hope through the love of God. So settle in, open your heart, and let's journey together through the power of storytelling.
When an irresistible force meets an immovable object. The Toronto police officers were clustered in a fraternal huddle, whispering when I came into the police guardroom in my freshly pressed uniform with my squeaky new shoes at 41 Division. I could hear fragments of, "He's a religious fanatic. He went through 11 training officers because no one wanted to work with him. Can't trust him. He says he won't even lie for a fellow police officer. How can a Christian back you up in a fight? What about turning the other cheek?" It was hard not to feel rejected, despite all my attempts at creating goodwill with my colleagues and trying to be a model police officer, having already won multiple academic and proficiency awards at the police academy. And then I heard the heavy-set man in the middle with the largest, reddest, handlebar mustache that I had ever seen in the wild say in a firm, commanding voice, "I make my own opinions. Everyone deserves a chance. None of you want to work with me anyways, because none of you want to work." Oh, so that was my new partner. He was the very archetype of an Irish, flat-footed, big city cop. Then suddenly, they all hushed when someone said and murmured, "The rookie's here." The man with the red, receding hair spun around with a grace that belied his size. And then he smiled at me, stretched out his hand in a grasp, in a solid grip, and he said in a commanding voice, "We're assigned to work together. My name is Jim Ray, spelled R-E-A, and pronounced Ray. I worked traffic for years, alone. I like to drive. Any objections? Let's go." Well, minutes later, we were gassing up the bright yellow police car, and I began to discover that Jim had his specific and peculiar ways that defined his very existence. Now, to Constable Ray, everything had a place, a purpose, and a protocol. When he parked, he was exactly 12 inches from the curb. And when he perfectly centered the automobile by carefully backing up into parking spots with his mirrors, he always used his blinkers. He washed the car to decrease wind friction and improve mileage. He put gas in the car whether it needed it or not, just to be safe. Not to mention checking the tire pressure, windshield wipers, brakes, radiator, oil, fluid levels, and every other thing accessible to a motorist. And horror of horrors for me, being a fly-by-the-seat pants, go-with-the-flow, easygoing, non-structured procrastinator, Jim expected, no, he demanded a similar level of functionality even from the organizationally impaired. I think that God missed giving me certain key parts when I was being created. Why? Because he's already given them to Jim. He was a year older, and he was definitely older, he was born old. Well, the first traffic stop of the night, it only took 5 minutes, was for a speeding taxi cab driver with a bad attitude. Well, Jim tuned him up with an amazing array of citations, complement of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. Instead of showing appreciation, this poor cabbie began to berate poor Jim who told him where to get off in rather colorful language. Predicting the inevitable escalation, I caught Jim by the sleeve and said loudly, "Come on, we've got a call." To this day, I do not know if Jim was irritated with me or secretly relieved when I rescued him from his aberrant stimulus response conditioning. You see, Jim immediately drove back to the station, found the officer in charge, and confessed to his swearing, instead of giving him more tickets, which would have been much more satisfying. Well, the staff sergeant, he just seemed to be amused. Instead of being upset, and he promised to deal with the taxi driver, who was already standing at the front desk fuming. That was when I discovered that police life was never, ever boring with Jim. He made policing an art and an adventure. There was always action, roaring around from one call to the other, driving traffic tickets to anyone who dared to violate a provincial statute in our city, and arresting anyone who needed arresting, including impaired drivers, disorderly use, drunks, reckless speeders, people with bench warrants, and particularly every violent domestic offender. What we enjoyed most was what we called picnics in our squad car on the top level of the Eglinton Square parking garage mall, where we shared exotic Armenian kitchen Greek food. Occasionally, we even had to kick out romantic couples whose X-rated parking activities in the privacy of the upper level of the garage was interfering and infringing upon our supper time festivals. Police work has been defined as long periods of boredom, punctuated by stark moments of terror. Then, with greasy fast foods lying undigested, Jim and I would punch it to rush off to arrest a crazy man who had murdered his fiancée in a public square, or struggle with a violent peeping Tom attempting to escape on top of a roof, or careen around city streets at insane velocities trying to get a motorcycle stopped in a high-speed pursuit, or battle violent protesters at a strike gone sour. We would clean up the Toronto East subway system of sexual offenders and drug dealers, and then capture robbers and thieves, druggies, wife-beaters, gang members, and every other type of human depravity, all for mother, apple pie, and the American way, to save Toronto and to promote world peace. That was our mission. You see, real cops looked down on social workers who were called all sorts of names, none of them good. Before signing on as an officer, I was a minister and counselor with degrees in psychology and pastoral counseling. My police colleagues could not just resist taunting me by calling me the Rev, Father Brown, or psychologist with a gun. Poor Jim, he was stuck with this Christian fanatic who shared his faith in God to everyone that we arrested. I told everyone that I handcuffed and that I placed in the back seat in our police car on the trip to jail that God deeply loves you. God has an amazing plan for your life. You obviously are on the wrong path, but call out to God. He will help you get on the right path. God will comfort you. God will give you the strength that you need to change and become the person that you're meant to be. And I did not spare Jim either a single sentence. And he listened to me and even backed me up by yelling at the felons who were being insolent to shut up and listen to the Rev. We were called Domestic 41, as we had assisted in over 2,000 domestic interventions. And we also conducted so many what we call compassionate notifications or death notifications regarding the sudden death of loved ones or horrible, horrible suicides. Investigations that we lost count, and we eventually assisted in transporting to the nearest psychiatric facility, a hospital full of mentally ill people who were all in clear and present danger. You know, we were so concerned about helping people. these numerous personal property incidents that we had to make reports and write traffic reports, and we had to always give them direct traffic. And I just lost my words, so I'm gonna stop.
Just keep going.
Yeah, I'm gonna. There were numerous personal or property accidents to investigate, reports to write, and traffic to direct, but only and always in the worst weather. The radio calls seemed to be eternally stacked up. Lunch breaks were non-existent. Overtime was an absolute necessity, regardless of the waiting birthday party or Christmas celebration. And in addition to our regular shifts, there were so many off-duty paid court appearances every week that it nearly doubled our meager salary. Despite the exhausting work schedule, we found that it was impossible to resist the extra double time and a half pay duties. We stumbled around in the fog of fatigue half the time, yet still made time for the regular choir practice at the end of every 5-week rotation. Metro's finest. For the next 6.5 years of our careers, Jim and I were placed on the same roster as steady partners, sharing the same shift, assignments, and the same police car. We won annual awards for our performances in policing, and we won the microwave every month for the number of tickets that we wrote. Just kidding, of course. Remember, there is no such thing as a ticket quota in police work. You can believe me, right? Well, it was the beginning of a close friendship for us, 25 years, that eventually transcended our police career. As through those years, we started a company called Heart and Hearth Heating and Air Conditioning. And we got our gas fitters licenses, our pipe fitters licenses. We moved each other's families into new homes and even had Jim and his wife Helen living with us for 6 weeks while their home was being built. And then I endured the tragic death of dear Helen soon after moving into their new beautiful home that they built together. And I got the honor of leading her to the Lord in a sincere sinner's prayer just before she died. And then there was retirements from our police careers, the beginning of new employment opportunities, and I had the enormous privilege of assisting in the marriage of Jim to his delightful, affectionate, and outspoken Kathy, an Irish lass full of charm, caring, and mischief. Jim and Kathy helped me through my terrible divorce and were ever encouraging me that someday I would find a worthy lady to love who would love me in return. And miracles of miracles, they were right. Jim and Kathy, of course, were naturally the very first people I introduced to the love of all my life, Lynn, who later became my darling wife. What a wonderful blessing Lynn is to me, and I am happy beyond expectations or expression. Thank you, dear God, for my loving Heavenly Father, for such a relational treasure. Well, as for Jim, he retired with full benefits at 50 years of age and built a gorgeous executive home in an exclusive golf community on the banks of the Welland Canal. I was so jealous, but in a good way, and I was happy for him. At least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. He invited me to watch the 80-foot-long ocean liners and massive steel freighters sail through his backyard every 5 to 10 minutes. What an amazing sight. I almost wanted to begin a new life and take up the sea. Jim had virtually every power tool known to Tim Taylor and Tool Time, and they were all in neatly categorized shelves in his immaculate 3-car heated garage. And he even had a motorized motorcycle lift so that he could service his 2 vintage chromed Harley Davidsons without bending his knees. Real men took off their shoes when they entered Jim's workshop, as it was hallowed ground. Being retired with nothing to do, Jim learned to drive a transport trailer like his dad, earned his Class A license, began to haul freight long distance. He remodeled his entire house in his spare time, and then rebuilt the clubhouse at the golf club. Then he began to a community newspaper. He sang in a glee club, and he became a tour guide for the Seaway Shipping Canal, acted in a murder mystery, and even spent time traveling with his wife on their motorcycles all over North America. A year and a half, only a year and a half later, yesterday in fact, on May 2nd, 2005 at 2:35 a.m., my loyal partner and best friend suddenly died of numerous complications from lung cancer that had only been diagnosed 6 weeks previously. Jim was such a good man and a prince among men. He had every material and relational blessing, possessing the most compelling reasons to live. But his allotted time in this oh-so-temporary mortal reality was forever over. God promoted him to glory and took Jim to his eternal home. It was so unfair, so unexpected, so shocking, and so like life. I'm glad that Jim is not in pain, but I still feel empty and lonely. He is completely irreplaceable. But poor Kathy, who loved Jim so tenderly, gone are their dreams of growing old together in their house by the ships. And how sad for Jim's father in losing a son after losing his wife the year before. A parent burying a child, it's just not natural or in the mix of our idyllic image of how life is supposed to be. Why? Why, Jim? I asked, and no rational answer came back to satisfy my violated sense of justice. And then I remembered my own words, spoken so assuredly, in so much faith, to so many people locked in handcuffs in the back seat of our police car. God deeply loves you. God has an amazing plan for your life. Call out to God. He will help you. God will comfort you. God will give you the strength you need to change and become the person that you're meant to be. Facing death, Jim bravely said to me without regret, "Ken, it has come to Jesus time." And I believe that my comrade in arms, an exceptional friend, is now waiting for me, having moved into his new eternal home with our loving God across that final canal in a reality beyond time.
Thank you for tuning into HopeCasts for inspiring stories that will touch your heart. If today's story encouraged you, then please subscribe to our channel and visit us at hopecasts.org to learn more. You can also watch the video version of this story and many more from Dr. Brown on our HopeCasts, YouTube, or listen on our Spotify, Apple, or Amazon Music podcasts. Until next time, keep holding on to hope, and please share these stories with someone who really needs encouragement. May God bless you.
I've been searching and I've been seeking. It seems like you're nowhere to be found. And I'd do anything just to see you. If I close my eyes, will I see you now? 'Cause I know faith hopes in what can't be seen, but my hope feels like a distant dream. Give me a glimmer of hope again. Save me from all my wandering. If I've been looking in all the wrong places, would you turn me back around?